everyone. Thank you for joining us today for Sunlight Newbies Live. Today is all about a teacher's Sabbath and servanthood. So what that means when you're a busy homeschool parent and some ideas for achieving a teacher's Sabbath, as I know sometimes that can be hard when you're busy. I am Sunny. I'm Sonlight's Community Manager and a Sonlight mom of two. And I'm being joined today by Christie, one of your Sonlight mentors. Christie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Christy, and this is our 14th year that we've been enjoying sunlight. We have 4 sons, my husband and I. One is away in college, one is graduating this year, and then we have 2 that are will be in high school in the fall.
Well, perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here. As always, with any of our lives, we are recording it so you can access this information again. And then also, if you have any questions, please drop those in the chat and Christy and I will answer those for you. We also have Jonna running the back end so she can type some responses to you as well. So make sure to let us know if you have any questions or need more information on something we're talking about. So Christy, let's talk about this idea of a teacher's Sabbath. I know it's something I never thought about until I started homeschooling. So how would we define that for people who have never heard that term before?
So we are caregiving, and caregiving takes energy. It takes quite a bit of energy. And so I think that these things, I think we should schedule for me to do this about once a year because I need to be reminded more than anyone that I need to take a Sabbath. And I think we all do because we are caregiving. We're concerned about everyone, but Jesus took time away. He took time apart, and we can do that too. And I highly recommend taking some time to do something that's restful. It may look different for each of us, but to find some time to find rest in the middle of this caregiving and this exciting journey of homeschooling.
Absolutely. I love everything you said there. And that's so true. I think sometimes, especially if your kids are young and they need a lot of you, you don't always think about taking that time to rest or recharge, or finding ways to better plan. And like you said, even Jesus needed time apart. So for us to try to keep going without ever stopping, that can obviously cause issues down the line. So let's talk about determining what is restful for you, though, because it is very personality driven in a lot of ways. I know I'm that uptight type A, and so sitting feels like I'm being idle and I'm not doing what I need to do. But what are some ideas if somebody's saying, oh my goodness, I know I need this rest, but I don't know how to achieve that?
Yeah, I think it's thinking through at each stage. It has been different for me. I know I've said this before. I don't know if this group has heard before that I would come to a place when my guys were little that my husband would come home from work, and I would be loading the van. When he came in, he would let me know I'm on the way. Give me that text message or the call, and I would just get the idea to start loading the van, and I would load everyone up, and they're like, "Where are we going?" And I would say, "It's a surprise, Dad. Daddy's going to tell you." And my husband, having no idea, would the garage door would go up and he would come in and say, "Where are we going?" And I would say, "I told them that you would let them know it's a surprise." And he would start to laugh, and he would say, "Okay, how long does it need to be?" And I would say, "I don't think it needs to be long. I just need a little bit of time." So sometimes it's time alone, like that. And sometimes for me, it might be reading. I joined a book club in recent years. I didn't do that certainly when my guys were younger, but in recent years I've done that. But you know what? This week I had to skip it, and that was the best rest for me, was to not go to the book club. So I think it's different exercise. I've had times where I've had an in-depth Bible study at church, and that was a great just refreshing time for me. And then other seasons where I needed a shorter something. So every season looks different, but I think going through and just kind of thinking through that, what is going to really bring rest right now.
Yeah, and I love some of the things you said actually check multiple boxes. So you mentioned exercise. I find that I don't naturally think to go outside, but every time I'm outside, I'm like, oh, I feel so much better. So if you can combine like take your dog for a walk, take the kids for a walk around the neighborhood, something that's exercise and outside. I know that for me, even if it's only like 5 to 10 minutes, it wakes me back up if I'm feeling tired or run down, and just sunshine is good for you. So definitely try to change where you're at. You also mentioned Bible study, which I think is great if you find, especially if you find you're having a hard time staying accountable, getting in the word. For me, I always loved a Bible study where every week I knew I had to have something done, and I had that time where childcare was provided. So again, you get that adult alone time with other people. And I know I've done women's Bible study at church that's been all ages, and then one that was more for people in their 20s and 30s when I was young and discovered I was the youngest one in my Bible study and I wanted to be with my peers more. So those are options. And book club, I love a good book club. If you have a hard time finding books for yourself, book club is great because then you can let somebody else tell you what to read, and you still get to read something that isn't just your kids Sunlight books, which those are great too, but sometimes you want to do your own thing. But yeah, any type of adult time too, a date night with your spouse or coffee with your friends or anything. For me, I find that very recharging, that I can't just be in kid mode all day long.
Right.
But determining what puts you in a good mood, what makes you happy, what you feel renewed from. I mean, if you're very introverted and going out is exhausting for you, finding that time alone is often great. But yeah, like you said, finding what works in that season as well. If you've got little, sometimes that can be harder than if your kids are older. So let's talk about ways to kind of schedule that rest and that recharging in without also letting everything go. Because of course we have a lot of responsibilities as homeschool parents. So what are ideas for making sure that we're making time for both?
There are a variety of ways, and again, season is going to play in here. I've had times where a co-op was refreshing for our family, and it was a good, wanted, needed, way to find rest in some areas. And at other times it added an extra burden depending on the rules of the co-op. And I had a group at one point of moms, and we got together and we brainstormed, like we were just brainstorming about what would be the best thing for this year. All of us were kind of feeling uncertain. We had our oldest could benefit from co-op, but we had younger children, and it was not a good fit for our babies that were all about the same. We all had babies about the same time. We were all pregnant at the same time and then had babies at the same time. So what we did was we gathered together, and we actually hired a local homeschooling teenager that we loved and trusted, and she actually had outdoor time for the kids to play outside while the moms had breakfast together and time to chat. We had a Bible study that didn't add, because we were just in a season that we didn't need to add extra accountability about anything, really. We were all hands on deck with raising little ones. And so my friend just had the idea. She said, I'll lead a little light Bible study, and then we'll have prayer time together and time to talk and time to have breakfast together. And that gave us a little time. So I would say, trying to find what fits at any given time. And then maybe finding the time in the day that works best. Sometimes waking up early might be the answer. And sometimes, I try, depending on if you're a morning person or a night owl. I am a night owl, and I love mornings. I feel so great when I go to your time zone, Sunny. I feel like such an awesome morning person. Then after a couple of days, it wears off. I love morning. I'm just not so great at them when it's really super early. So anyway, finding a time that you can be quiet and not have a dozen interruptions like we sometimes have with those people that we love in our house. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. I love what you said about, finding that time, whether you're a morning or a night person. I tried
Mhm.
for years to be a morning person because everybody said, oh, morning people, they get so much done and all of this, and they're ready
Yeah.
to go and they're healthier and all these things. And so I tried to be a morning person, and I eventually realized I am not wired that way.
Mhm.
I actually went and took an exercise class this past Saturday morning. And as I was driving, I was like, oh, I totally get why morning people love the morning. It's quiet, there's no traffic, it's a beautiful day. But I was exhausted all day long versus if I stay up till midnight, I'm just a happier, nicer person. So look at yourself and figure out what is that quiet time for you, either before your kids are awake or after they go to bed, and try to stick somewhat to that schedule. And I know if you're a night person and you have to be up in the morning, it is hard because you do have to discipline yourself to go to bed, sometime before 2 a.m. But I love that time at night. That's when I like to read my books, is after everybody's gone to bed and it's quiet. So yeah, kind of look at that. I also love what you said about leveraging a homeschool teen to watch younger kids. Now that my daughter is that homeschool teen, she watches kids in the neighborhood who are little and need that time because she's available during the day. So don't forget about those older high school teenagers, that are homeschooled as well and available to watch younger kids. You mentioned a co-op too. And so that's something too. You talked about the different seasons. I have never gotten involved in a co-op that required me to do anything because I don't have time. I don't want to do that. I have no desire to be in that role in a co-op. But if I can just drop my kids off and they can learn from others and hang out with others, so oftentimes the activities I find for my kids are things that I can drop them off at. So kind of look at, your personality. What do you have time for? What do you need? Is it more helpful to you at this season to drop your kids off somewhere and then you go run errands or do those things by yourself? Or do you want to get involved with them and hang out with the other parents and do all of those things? Because again, at different seasons, that might be a lot of work or that might be really fun and renewing for you. Also, Christy, you mentioned your husband when he came home from work, he would take the kids. Don't forget your spouse. There's a resource right there that oftentimes wants to spend time with the kids and maybe do a read aloud with them or do science experiments or things like that. I think sometimes if you're the primary homeschool parent, you just don't even think in terms of, oh, this other person can jump in and help me out. And so, I love to tell people I majored in science. I love science. I do not like science experiments. So my husband does those with our youngest every single weekend. So, there's a lot of options like that. If you find that you're just exhausted and you don't want to do something, or, it's really a frustration for you, that your spouse might be willing to jump in and do those things. Well, let's talk about this idea of servanthood. I mean, if you are parenting your kids, you're serving them in a lot of ways. But how do we demonstrate that, but then train our children also to start being involved in, the culture of the family and taking a step up to their next role? How do we prepare them for down the line?
That has looked different in different seasons. Again, that's going to be it all changes over the course of 14 years. Everything has changed. But I think really taking time to teach some of those skills, just things you need to know about doing things around the house, including it takes a little bit longer on the front end to include your children, and there may be certain things. I know with laundry, there are people who do not want their children participating in laundry, and some people who are fine with that. So find your way to include them in a way that works for you. And I did like when I had a toddler that could help me put the clothes from the washer to the dryer. Even if we had a top loader that they couldn't reach, I could bring the wet clothes and put them over on the door, and they would push them in. That was their job. They would push them in anytime I needed somebody, just including them. They enjoyed doing that. They liked helping me out, liked helping me get involved. Sometimes I would just stop. I do just stop, and I will say, okay, I see 5 things in this room that need to be done, and there are 5 of us. So I give everybody a job, or I call out a job and somebody volunteers for it. And then we all get busy, set the timer for 15 minutes, do the chore that needs to be done, take out the trash, clean the counters, do whatever needs to be done really quickly. All of us do that quickly, and then we can get down to business in a neater environment. And that may or may not, you may not be the neatest person in your group there. I am not. I have a son who loves everything very organized. He will actually be the one to come and say to me sometimes, I'm a pretty neat person. I like things in a certain way, but he is more so than I am. Okay. He has that little need for order, and his brother that he shares a room with is the opposite. And so just part of learning to live together and be respectful of each other, I think, and serving each other is noticing when your messy is too messy for the person that you are sharing a space with. And I don't know if this is the right time to talk about outside the home as well, but I got my guys involved also in noticing in our community. We were able, when they were little, I really wanted to find a way that we could be involved in the community. And at the time we had a growing homelessness in our area and a soup kitchen. And we became drivers for the soup kitchen. So we found out that we could volunteer. The boys were too young to go and serve in the soup kitchen, but we could go and pick up from Chipotle. They donated meat, and then Pizza Hut donated pizza, and a couple of other places, and even a grocery store. So we would go behind the scenes in those places, and the guys enjoyed going. And at Pizza Hut, we had to walk into the freezer and get all the boxes and take them out, and then we would drive them over, and then they would take them into the soup kitchen. And so that was a fun thing that we did together to serve. And I think that is one of the best ways to be refreshed. I remember from my teenage years going and visiting a nursing home, and going in kind of focused on myself and coming out not that way. And that was very impactful to me to realize sometimes if I have my eyes too much on myself, that's the time when I need to be looking around and serving others. So.
Oh yeah, that's such a great point. And I love whether it's at home or out, you mentioned kind of that collaborative team approach, which I think is so much easier to do when you're homeschooling because you're already teaching these kids, you're around them a lot. And yeah, like you said, even if the kids are young, they can still be involved in serving others outside the home or getting used to being around their siblings and the rest of the family and not leaving messes everywhere, especially if you have a neat sibling. Also, something else that you brought up was that you do have one son who's even neater than everybody else. And I know Sheila, who's our organization guru, has talked about this a lot, that if you are frustrated with each other or you're having a hard time getting into the mood to do school, oftentimes because your environment is too messy or somebody's having a hard time focusing because of that visual clutter. So like you said, divvying up the tasks and saying, let's get this cleaned up really fast. Or I know we do that after dinner because I'm working during the day. So oftentimes we're doing school before and after dinner. So I'll make food and then I'm like, let's get this cleaned up really fast so that we can get back to doing our schoolwork. And so yeah, dividing up those chores and conquering together is a great way to both serve each other and contribute to the home. I know it was something important for us. I did not want it to be mom and dad do everything and you as the kids don't do anything. And then you grow up and you don't know how to do anything. It's very much we're a team as a family and we all contribute. Something else is that siblings can help each other or contribute in their own ways, whether it's the schoolwork or chores or anything like that. If you have a child who's reading and then you have a younger child who's not, and maybe you need to work with this other child over here, get that kid that's reading to read a read aloud to their younger sibling. That's something I started, when my kids were a little bit younger, and I didn't have time one day to read the read aloud to my youngest, and my daughter could read. So I said, hey, can you read this to your brother? And sure enough, they sat down and they did, and they loved it. And I don't know why I thought I had to do all the read alouds, because you can still learn from his sisters. So yeah, make sure you get your kids involved. We talked a little bit about spouse earlier as well. You probably have someone who's willing to do the things they can when they're home. A couple of years ago, my husband started working remotely as well. So we usually have all four of us here during the day. And it's been really fun, because the kids for a long time were just used to asking me for help on all their schoolwork, because I was the parent here. And now I can say, oh, I'm busy, go ask your dad. And then, we can kind of tag team that, which makes it really fun.
Right.
For school. Also, maybe trading up your roles or walking a mile in the other family member's shoes. I mean, those are all great ways when you can see, like, if you have certain kids that do certain chores, have them trade and see what their sibling is going through. I know my daughter actually cleaned the kitchen a couple days ago, and afterwards she was like, "Oh, don't make a mess! Like you're making a mess in the kitchen. I just cleaned it." It's so funny how they realize after they have done a chore that maybe they don't regularly do, how important it is, to contribute and do your part.
It can be fun to negotiate with your spouse as well. Like, I'll do the dishes if you check the math, or I'll mow the grass. I mean, it's white noise. I will go and mow the grass if you will check the math. When we had four different math programs, that was something that we would take turns. If on Saturday, I might say, I'll be glad to mow the grass if you want to check the math, just having a break, and he didn't have to mow and I didn't have to do the math, and we were both happy, negotiate and play with, which activity is preferable at any given time.
Well, that's so true. My husband and I negotiate a lot on the driving kids places. So it'll be like, do you want to drop this child off at this lesson, or do you want to teach this child math, or whatever it may be? And so yeah, that is a great way. Yeah, whatever you don't want to do. Also, when we clean, like the weekly chores, we oftentimes will do that on Saturday. We call it family clean. And so it's often, well, what chore do you dislike the least? And so, like, my husband will vacuum and he'll do all the floors, so that I don't have to lug the vacuum up and downstairs, but then I'll clean the bathrooms because I do it better than the rest of the family. So, so we all kind of divvy up the chores that way. But let's talk a little bit about independence and, fostering that independence so that you can get breaks throughout the day, whether it's like a rest break, a mom timeout, or, if you just have other things and other responsibilities that you need to get done. How do you get your kids to a point where you don't have to be there hovering over them all the time?
Mm-hmm. I would start building this up, from as soon as you can. At one point, I know where we lived and where our space was at the time, I didn't feel completely comfortable with my kids going outside. And I had a little one, and one that was not going outside as much as the others that wanted to be outside more. So I had a nice door that I could that I had a screen on, and I could leave that open. And I had certain rules, like I need you to stay where I can see you. You have to be able to see me from where you're playing. So if you're out there throwing a baseball or, whatever it is, then you need to be able to see me. And I, that was something that we did. We started with some time in their room, or quiet time reading after lunch, in the early afternoon, maybe while I was working with someone else, or maybe I took a little time there for a little while. I did need about 45 minutes in the afternoon just to kind of collect myself and get ready for the things that we were going to do later in the afternoon and the evening before, we had long bath time and all of those things that we had each day. And so the schedule was a little crazy. So I did need a little quiet time. I just found that it was really beneficial to me to have that. And I, it was something that I did have to kind of work at, it wasn't automatic. They didn't all say, okay, great, we're going to do do 45 minutes and it's all going to be wonderful. We did have to, some persistence of saying, oh, we're doing this, remember we're going to have an hour or 45 minutes or whatever it was, whatever you think is, you know, reasonable for your kids' ages, and something that they enjoy doing, maybe saving an activity that they like. One of the things that my guys enjoy is music. So my son will enjoy guitar in his room. He would do that all afternoon if I let him now. But we started that small and gave him a little time to play in the afternoon between subjects, where we had kind of a little reset after lunch.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's great, kind of that afternoon time if your child is napping, if you've got littles, that can be a great time to conquer things with your older kids, school-wise. But then as the kids got older, I've heard of that when they quit taking naps, do a quiet time in the afternoon where everybody goes to their own space and does something. Also starting small with the academics and getting them kind of to that point where they can do some of it on their own. For us, we always started with math. So, okay, I've explained this little section. You've got 6 math problems here. I'm going to walk over there and get my coffee or whatever it is, finish these 6 math problems. And then when you're done, let me know and I'll come back and help you with the next section. And so we just started really small with that till they could do the whole math lesson, and then like handwriting and just adding in once they're a solid reader and you can trust them not to skip pages or not to mispronounce things, letting them read their readers on their own, maybe in the other room or where you can still see them. But that way, they gradually get to that point where they can do their schoolwork independently. And then, like you said, going outside, whether that's playing in the yard or a family activity, getting them used to, okay, we don't run out in front of cars or, all the safety things that you have to worry about when they're really little, until they get to that point where you can say, okay, you can go play out front now. And that they're going to be safe in your house and all of that. Right. But let's talk about the intentionality of taking breaks. Because like I mentioned earlier, I think you don't always think about it. You don't think about needing a Sabbath, and really parenting is the one job that you don't get vacation time from. Like anything else you might do, you get vacation, you get that break time. But if you're always with your kids, like you are when you're homeschooling, you might have to think about it a little more. So what are some signs maybe that you're at the end of your rope and you really need to take that break? And then how do you make sure that you do?
I think that sometimes I did. I have 4 sisters, and all of them have children that are older than mine. And I think that they pushed me a little bit ahead to do sister weekends and things like that. Maybe even a little before I was ready to do so. But then whenever I did, I was always glad that I did. It was always maybe I had to be away before I realized, oh, wow, I needed this, So I think if you're beginning to get sick, or if you're missing sleep and you're and you're beginning to get irritable, those kind of things, or I don't know if you do at your house, but this happens at my house, that these kind of things happen. If I have a short temper or those kind of things, I do think that it's those are signs that I need some time. And I will be honest with my boys and say, I think it's good to communicate clearly on things like that, I'm not upset with you. I need a little bit of time to calm myself down. I think that's fine to let your kids know that let them see you emotionally regulating yourself and communicating with them. I think that can help them to recognize when they're doing the same thing, when they're overly tired or didn't sleep well and they begin to, bark at each other, I think that can be, I did have a son one time, and a reason for handwriting, there are the little verses that they write on the week. And it was kind of a wake up call to me and my husband, because our son gave us the one that said, I think it's I don't know the translation that it was in very well, but it was something like, most importantly of all, remember to show deep love for one another because love covers a multitude of wrongdoings or something like that. So I think that was his little way of saying, hey, mommy and daddy, yeah. Remember to show deep love for each other. Love covers a lot of things here, and so that was our little wake-up call. And it was really funny because he put that on our bathroom mirror, and we had it there for years. And when they became teenagers, I gave it back to them and put it on there. It is currently hanging on their bathroom door. So I have had teenagers in the house for years now, and so it was really nice to give that little verse back to them.
I needed it more now.
If your children are sharing a reason for handwriting verses with you, then it might be time that you need to evaluate and get some rest, and that might be a sign for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like you said, do it before you have to, before you get to that point where you're sick. I know I don't get sick very often, but when I do, it's usually because I've been burning the candle at both ends and not sleeping and not eating as well and all the different things. So yeah, make sure you're taking care of that ahead of time. I know too, last week I was driving somewhere and I just felt very out of it. It was funny because I didn't feel tired necessarily, but it was like I just wasn't really focused on anything, and I was having focus issues, and that's not normally a problem for me. And so I was like, oh, I think I need to go to bed early tonight. I think I'm experiencing some stress somewhere that I didn't even really, there was no way I could pinpoint it. I just knew that I felt odd. And so that night I went to bed earlier. Then the next day I woke up feeling great. So yeah, make sure that you're sleeping enough. Like I said, if you're the night owls, I know it's hard, but sometimes you have to go to bed earlier. Make sure you're rested. Also, Christie, you mentioned giving it back to teenagers. This is something that I will preach all day, every day. Let your teenagers sleep whenever you're able to. They are growing and developing a lot. And I know when my teen gets tired, it is a whole change in temperament and personality, and it's much harder to do anything with her than when she's rested. So, if you were able to let them sleep in a little bit, because I'm a night owl, I don't actually wake my kids up ever. I let them wake up on their own unless we have an early appointment. But whatever you can do that way with kids, if they are tired, they are probably experiencing something as well and need to sleep. So, make sure that everybody's well rested. Another thing too that I know is hard for me early on, especially when my husband did work outside the home, was that I was so caught up in doing everything, right? I needed to take care of these kids, and I needed to clean the house, and I needed to run errands, and I needed to do all these things that I didn't even realize that I needed to ask for help. I'm married to a wonderfully laid back man who, if I've got it, he's like, okay, cool, you got it, So I realized at one point, he was like, you're not asking for help. Do you need my help? What can I do for you? So if you have kind of that tendency to just do it all and not even think about, other people can step in and help me, make sure you're asking for that help from, whether it's your mom, your husband, whoever, if the kids, once they're old enough, hey, I need you to clean your room, whatever it is, make sure that you're aware of that, because that is something that I have a tendency to just take charge and do things and not even notice that, I'm like a car that hasn't had an oil change. So
I think too, communication. But for me, sometimes I put too much. My husband tells me this all the time. You put more pressure on yourself than anyone else, and so he's constantly telling me that. And so sometimes I will realize. I will say out loud, okay, what is really stressing me out is that I need to do this and this and this, and I will list these things. And in that list is the baseboards and this, and, like big things like, okay, we have this senior recognition and I need to get this in, and for my son, and I've got this, and I list all these things. And then in that is the baseboards. He's like, okay, forget the baseboards. I don't care about the baseboards. Like you're the only one that cares about the baseboards. We will not do the baseboards. We will do the baseboards next time, like next month or something. But right now we have other priorities, and it's okay. And just having somebody else say what is important to them, that helps me if I'm feeling all of this pressure to do too many things that are not possible to do, then I think that it's good to communicate and just to say, okay, here are the 6 things that are stressing me out. Which 3 should I do? Which 3 are the ones that are most important? Help me decide. That's a good thing that we do sometimes. We just say, which 3 things. And sometimes my husband will say, let's just do 2 of them. That one doesn't really matter either, And so he is definitely the low stress, laid back one of the 2 of us. And so he that helps me sometimes. And then also to realize sometimes if you've had some very stressful things, we're talking about low stress type things, mostly in what we've talked about. But if you have large stress things, parenting teenagers while you have aging parents with heavy things going on, either medical crisis or whatever is going on, that is a lot. And so if you find yourself, even if you live far away and you're not involved in the everyday, it is an emotional burden, that you care for your family and they live far away. Or even I have a family member that went through a huge loss in the last couple of years. And so carrying that burden with her and being there for her, I don't think it's a bad idea. There is at our church a professional counseling service, and I actually scheduled to just check up and make sure everything was okay. Like when you're saying, do this before you get to a spot. I just wanted to go in, and I just kind of went in and said, okay, here's what's going on. Do you think I'm okay? Do you think everything's okay? And that it was really reassuring to me to hear someone else say, oh, yes, this is difficult. And I think that, as we talked through things, I think you're coping okay. I think this is good, to have someone else objectively to speak to what is going on when you have a lot going on. I think it's not a bad idea. But instead of worrying about it, like, oh, am I okay? Am I handling all of this okay? I think it's good to reach out and ask, and maybe you do, just to have an avenue for, whenever I talk to someone, they said, if you do become stressed about this and you find yourself, and here's some things to look for, if this or this or this, then you might want to come in and there's someone that you could talk to. And so that was reassuring to me. So I'm just saying that's not a bad thing to just, before you get far down the road, and, we carry things. And if you are carrying 18 things and somebody hands you something, you just hold it and you keep holding it and holding it and holding it. And if you can, we do that. Yeah, we do that figuratively as moms. And so things that we don't even know that we're holding. So I do think it is not a bad idea to just maybe even just have a little checkup. Is everything okay?
Yeah, well, and you mentioned having that outsider perspective too, because sometimes, we will churn things into some major thing and it really isn't a big deal.
Right.
And when your husband says, oh, I don't care about the baseboards, and no one's coming over except for us, you realize like, oh, I'm freaking out over nothing.
Right.
But like you said, going to a counselor, if you're going through something really weighty and you're taking on that burden, normal life, just the daily tasks you have to do can feel overwhelming. And getting that outside perspective or that outside help, just like you would if you were physically ill, is super important. So yeah, absolutely, be aware of those signs and know when you're not quite yourself at what's going on, and make sure that you're taking care of that. And then if it's just, oh, I'm just stressed out today, turn on loud music, dance around, do something fun. That again, because like I said, I don't necessarily love going outside automatically unless I'm doing something outside. But even just a few minutes outside, picking up the school and going out to the backyard and sitting on the patio furniture can kind of shift that perspective as well. So yeah, figure out for you what that change of pace looks like, or what is going to kind of right you back to normal again. But what about when you lose it or you're about to? You mentioned your son giving you guys his memory verse, to remind you. What are some other options? Because we do know when we're with our kids all day, occasionally those short tempers are going to come out, or you're going to say things you don't mean, you don't mean, whether that's to your spouse or your kids or whoever. So what do you do if you've blown it and now you feel like you're the worst parent in the world? I know that's hard. That mom guilt a lot of us carry anyway. So what do you do?
So I think communication again, with my guys. I know, just talking to them. I know, in Science F, whenever the book Understanding Your Brain, that talks about hormones and that talks about how things are changing for teenagers. Whenever we got to that book, I was in my early 40s. And so I was able to say to my son, hey, we're going to go through this together. I'm not quite sure what's going to be happening with me, and you're not quite sure what's going to be happening with you. So we're going to get through this together. And so just communicating and saying, I'm grouchy and I don't really know why, and I'm sorry, like I said before, I'm not irritated with you. I am grouchy right now. Maybe I need something to eat, and maybe your kids might need something to eat sometimes, or people do can be the meanest. I worked at Chick-fil-A whenever I was a teenager, and I remember getting yelled at by a man, and my Mr. Hudson was the nicest man. He came, my boss, he came afterward, and he was like, okay, that had nothing to do with you. You did nothing wrong. That man was hungry, and there's something with blood sugar and anger, and he needed something to eat, and he is a nice person typically, but he was not nice to you today, and there was no reason. You did nothing wrong. Just want you to know. That is, I have remembered that, and I've told my children about that, because we can get angry if we need to eat something, and sometimes I do need a few minutes to myself. I need to close a door and have a few minutes and tell my children I'll be back in 10 minutes, and I need to take a little time and put things into perspective and pray and ask for God's strength, because he's the one that can help us do what we need to do every day and be there and love the people well that are in our house. And that is not going to come from me just trying to keep going and trying to tough it out. So sometimes I need a break. I need to pray. I need to walk away, and I need to, have a chance. I need to apologize to my children at times, or my husband, or I need to apologize to my husband in front of my children. I've done that for sure, or apologize to them about what I said about my husband. I have done that before too, maybe more than once.
Yeah, and I love that. Yeah, because it's so important to model that. I think I had a conversation with my oldest recently, and she made the point that she's like, you don't really see adults apologize. Yeah, I mean, you just don't, right? The adult is always right. If you're somewhere out in public, the authority, they're in charge, like you can't really say anything. But you have this unique opportunity when you're home with your kids to say, oh, I messed up. I was mean to your dad, or I was mean to you, or, I am definitely the queen of hangry, and my husband and kids know, like, if I'm starting to get irritated, they'll be like, when did you eat last? Because I'm that coffee drinker in the morning, and I might go all morning without eating anything before I realize, oh, shoot, I should have eaten something, and now I'm crabby with everyone. And oftentimes, like you said, it's just, you just need to go eat something. Your blood sugar is down. And especially if you're drinking a lot of coffee like I do, you're like, "Rrr." And so, yeah, so know yourself and know when those situations are coming, but don't be afraid to apologize. And absolutely, if you've blown it, you should. I think back to, I think it was when my daughter was potty training, and she just was not getting it, and I was getting very frustrated. So I walked away to the pantry, closed myself in the pantry, and prayed, God, help me. I need to calm down. And it was that walking away, getting away, because I was getting very irritated because she just was not getting it at that point. And so no matter what it is, whether it's potty training or your child making a mess or being loud, this is something I've discovered about myself recently, that I really don't like a lot of background noise. I know for years that I like to drive in quiet, and I know a lot of people are not that way. But if I'm somewhere and there's a lot of just like crinkling papers and murmuring and people chewing and things like that, I get very irritated. And so if you're in a situation like that, walk away, put on headphones, do something that's quiet, breathe, all of those different things, so that way you don't lose it. But again, because you're with your kids so much, you do have that unique opportunity to model, how does Jesus call us to live? How are we supposed to behave? How are we supposed to treat people? And so sometimes we do screw up and we need to apologize. So anything else, Christie, before we go, that you want to share about, this topic, whether it be the servanthood side of things or taking a Sabbath, getting through those really hard days where you want to pull your hair out? What do you think?
I just want to encourage everyone that it is worth it. I mean, working through these things, putting yourself aside and I mean, I'm not saying, knowing how to schedule the time and get the, time alone that you need, and the time of refreshing and the rest that you need. But then just the sheer fact of having your children at home every day. And we are learning to put ourselves aside when we're doing that. And they're learning to, to get along together and to apologize, and without making an excuse for what you're doing, but to really genuinely apologize, without excuse making, and teaching your children to give genuine apologies when they apologize. You're giving them life skills that they're going to take into the workplace, that they're going to take into any kind of situation that they're in the future. When you're when you go to school every day, you can have little things that happen and you just blow it off because, you're not going to see those people that much. And so, things can just be let go. But when you live in the same house and you're with people and you're under the same roof, then you really do have to, you're forced to work things out. And I think that it benefits your child and you, for the future, for anything that they go into after that. I think that you are building something that is very beneficial. So just remind yourself of that when it's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yes, conflict resolution, communication skills. I mean, things like that are kind of a byproduct of homeschooling that you don't necessarily realize until somebody comments on how articulate your child is, or that they can carry on that conversation, or that they have low drama relationships, with other kids or whatever it may be. Those were things that initially, when I first started homeschooling, I didn't see that being a case until my kids got a little bit older, and people outside were saying those things, and wow, your kids are so helpful. They clean up after church, or, all these different things that you are teaching them. You just don't realize it necessarily.
Right.
So hold on to those good things. And I know we say it a lot, but whatever reason you're homeschooling, hold on to that why when it gets hard. Because I absolutely agree with you, Christie. Now that my kids are older, I see the fruits of the labor when they're young. And even though they're not done yet, I know we're on that right track. I'm starting to see, this is the relationship we'll have 10 years from now, because we are spending so much time together and we do all these things together. And I feel like my kids know me really well, which is another benefit that, growing up, my parents were my parents, and they were their parent persona. And it wasn't until I was an adult that I felt like I really knew them as people and who they were internally, not just as my parents, but, my kids, they definitely see a much rawer version of me than just because we're together all the time. So just be encouraged. If you need prayer or anything like that, definitely pipe in the app. We have all been there. We have all felt probably what you are feeling right now or down the line. So definitely reach out to us. We would love to pray for you and encourage you. Which, speaking of, Amber, one of the other Sunlight mentors, will be going live at 2:00 today, offering some encouragement. She's going to talk about what you're putting your faith and trust in. And I'm really excited to hear her. I love to listen to Amber, preach, as I call it. I feel like she could lead Bible study all day, every day. So make sure you're tuning in for that. Also, join us for Homeschool Helps and Hacks on April 20th. That is going to be our last live Homeschool Helps and Hacks for a few months. We'll take a small hiatus in the summer. And of course, all our mentors are busy at conventions. So we're going to do less of those online events after that. But that one is going to be Balancing Life's Juggling Act. So much like last month's, Vanishing Burnout session, this session, and now that one, they're all tips to help you manage all the things. But this one is specifically if you feel like homeschooling is taking you away from, cooking meals, doing chores, running errands, all the things you need to do. How in the world do you squeeze everything in? That's really going to be the focus of that one. So join us on April 20th for that. Also, our summer readers and summer reading challenge announcements are going to be coming in a few weeks. So you guys, if you're newbies, may not realize, but in the past, Sunlight has come out with summer reading packages, and we've done summer reading challenges the last few years to get kids excited about reading all summer long. So stay tuned for those announcements. And then our Sunlight Connections Summit, which is a 2-day event, is going to happen online on June 1st and 2nd. So if you are not able to make it to a convention or there's not one near you, this is going to be a great opportunity for you to have various sessions all day for those days to choose from. You can ask your questions, you can watch live, or you can watch on demand later. So make sure to join us for that. And then if you are waiting until April for all the 2023 products, they are out now. If they are not, you will get a note in your cart about what's back ordered or not, but you can definitely purchase 2023 products now. So get on the website, sign into your account, and start adding those things to your cart. We have a lot of great promotions in April. So you're going to get the lowest prices of the year. They do have a tendency to go up in the summer and then stay up. So if you want them at lower prices, if you also want to take advantage of 9-month payment plans. And then we also have our free Navy totes, which are everybody's favorite Sunlight tote bags. And there's a few other things as well in April. So make sure you're jumping in there and getting a jump on next year's order, especially for those back ordered items. Anything that is back ordered, you want to get it before you're ready to start school. So I was actually placing my own order earlier today, and I highly encourage you to do that. And of course, join us for everything right here in the app. If you need anything at all, let Christy and I know, and the other mentors, we're all in there and would love to help you with anything. And thank you so much for joining us today. Christy, thank you for coming and sharing your wisdom with us, and Jana for running the back end for us so that we're live and in the app for everybody. And as always, you can reach out to us anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you.